3 weeks, 3,000 miles, and a journey through America's heartland. Welcome back to part 2 of our epic Lincoln Highway road trip. If you haven't watched part 1 yet, start there to see how we traveled from New York City to Nebraska, enjoying historic battlefields, quirky roadside attractions, and classic Americana along the way. But for now, we head west, where the landscapes get bigger, the sky stretches wider, and the spirit of the open road truly comes alive. From the rolling plains of Nebraska to the rugged mountains of Wyoming, the salt flats of Utah, and finally the iconic Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco, this leg of the journey is packed with wild scenery and unforgettable road trip moments. Here's part 2 of our Lincoln Highway journey. We started our day with breakfast and coffee at the Espresso Shop Cafe and Roastery in North Platte, Nebraska. Our first stop of the day is Buffalo Bill's house. If you're not familiar with Buffalo Bill, he was a larger-than-life character in the late 1800s to the early 1900s. During that time, he was a part of the Pony Express, he served in the Union Army during the war, and then he started Buffalo Bill's Wild West show, which was a popular touring show in both the United States and Europe. Here you can tour his house, which was built in 1886 at the height of his popularity. It has over 4,000 acres of land, and it was the largest house in North Platte when it was built. This is Buffalo Bill's room, and it's exactly what you would expect it to look like.
So one of the things about the Old West that these heroes or people that you've heard about, they were larger than life because they're people who would write these dime novels about them, and people came to think that that was actually the truth of who they were. And in reality it wasn't, but it made them become these bigger, larger than life figures. At the same time, Buffalo Bill was a larger than life figure with all the things he did in his life.
After exploring the house, be sure to walk past the pond and go into the large barn. Buffalo Bill raised cattle and purebred stallions, and so he used this barn to house the stallions. There was even a docent here who was able to answer all the questions that we had while we walked around. They've really preserved the history well in this state park. There's lots of pictures and things to see. They even have some events and activities going on later today. So definitely a cool place to stop by on the road. Before leaving North Platte, be sure to head over to the Golden Spike Tower. This spot has a museum on the first floor, and then you can pay to go up 8 floors to the top of the spike where you can see out over the Bailey Yard, which is the largest railroad yard in the world. I want to give a special shout out to Daniel while I'm up here. He hand wrote all of the different stops that I could do on the Lincoln Highway when he heard I was coming, and he loves trains. So thanks, Daniel, for all your help with the Lincoln Highway planning. Supposedly this rail yard could have 10,000 cars pass through it in a day, and that it's bigger than some towns are. It's often where freight trains are broken up and reorganized before heading to destinations across the country. There's a few exhibits about its history, its role in the war, and how switchboards work up here if you're interested in learning more. Or if you're a train enthusiast, you could probably sit there and watch the trains move around for hours. We've spent about 45 minutes here ourselves, but we probably could have spent longer if we didn't have a lot of stops today.
So we had talked about earlier, at what point would you think that you've made it to the west? I feel like we've made it to the west once we've hit North Platte. It started with seeing the gas station Sinclair dinosaur with the saddle on him. And then it kind of continues with all the Buffalo Bill stuff and whatever. I feel like I'm in the west.
Heading on, we made it to the town of Sutherland, which had an old gas station and a cool Lincoln Highway mural. We're officially past the halfway point, only 1,373 miles left to go. As we continued on, Lincoln Highway, which was Highway 30 in this area, was paralleling the Interstate 80 as we made it to our next stop, Ole's Big Game Steakhouse and Lounge. Established in 1933, this restaurant is known as Nebraska's most famous watering hole. It has over 200 taxidermy animals from all over the world collected by the restaurant's founder. It's a dimly lit spot with wood panel walls and an old school western feel. It's definitely not a place I was expecting to see on the Lincoln Highway, and I definitely didn't think I would be sitting there eating next to a polar bear. It's a crazy roadside attraction, but it had really good food and it was certainly a unique spot on the drive. As we were driving through Nebraska, my dad and I kept commenting on how beautiful it was and how rural it felt. We saw fewer cars and were often following trains as we drove along the highway. Arriving in the next town, we saw this spot called Front Street, which looked like an old western themed restaurant and bar. When we popped in, we saw that they had a free cowboy museum, which was one room but was cool to walk around and see. And then they also had a large saloon where you could get a drink or lunch if you were interested. There's also an old gas station in the town. which has a Lincoln Highway sign right out front. This was one of the better recreated gas stations we saw along the drive, as it even had a statue in front of someone looking to help you pump gas. Before leaving the town, we went out to see the Boot Hill Cemetery. This cemetery is located at the end of the Texas Trail, which was often used in the 1880s. And it's said that many of the unlucky cowboys who passed away on the trail were actually buried here with their boots on. This is called the Trail Boss, and it's dedicated to all of those who came up the Texas Trail. None of the bodies are here. They were moved in the 1900s, but they recreated a lot of the headstones to let you know what it would have looked like. Leaving town, we made our way towards California Hill, which was popular on the Pony Express and was used by many wagon trains that were heading west. We drove up the dirt road to see wagon tracks, but we couldn't find any signs or anything that notes where the wagon tracks were. Also, I would say that to me, this is kind of the west right now. When you start seeing the cattle instead of the corn, that makes me feel like we're in the west. Let us know if you have an opinion for where the west starts. And I will say that as we continued driving, there was often 45 minutes of nothing before we would hit the next town. Our next stop brought us to a place called Potter's Sundry, which opened in 1930 and has the original soda bar. It's famous for creating something called a tin roof sundae, which has scoops of vanilla ice cream, chocolate syrup, scoops of chocolate ice cream, and is topped with marshmallow cream and Spanish peanuts. All right, here's our classic sundae.
And it was called the tin roof because when they put the peanuts on it, the sound that it made when the peanuts hit the plate sounded like rain on a tin roof.
Amazing. Crunchy peanuts, marshmallow cream, hot fudge. What more could you want? Pop's just eating straight marshmallow cream.
Even that's amazing. Wow, delicious.
Definitely share one, they're big, and shout out to the woman who was working here and who owned it. She was awesome. And there's the tin roof sundae is named for. And right across the street there's an actual photo of what Pops looked like while he was eating his ice cream's tin roof sundae. After finishing one of the best food stops on the drive, we continued towards Cheyenne, which was an hour and 15 minutes from here, and we stopped at Our Lady of Peace. This is Our Lady of Peace, which is supposedly the largest Virgin Mary in the United States. Can't get too close to her, but there's Pops for reference. It's pretty tall. The statue was built in 1998 and it's 30 feet tall and weighs 180 tons. Pops, we made it to Wyoming. What state number is that?
I think it's 10.
Double digits, baby.
10.
Only 3 states left on this road trip. From here, we just headed right towards Cheyenne and towards Frontier Park, which is where there was an event happening that we were planning to see. We just happened to be in Cheyenne for Frontier Days, which is a festival that's been happening for over 100 years, so decided to go check it out before we continue on. Frontier Days in Cheyenne is one of the world's largest outdoor rodeo and western celebrations and has been going on since 1897. The main draw is the rodeo, which happens multiple times in the arena throughout July. But there's lots of other events like parades, there's a chuck wagon cook-off, there's an Indian village, there's shops, there's a midway. It really is a full Western experience you can have here. We spent a good hour just walking around taking it all in, and we saw 10% of what they have at this event. And then we headed over to the Frontier Days Museum, which is something that you can see throughout the year if you're not here when the actual event's going on. The museum talks about Cheyenne, but it mainly focuses on the over 100 years of history for the Frontier Days celebration. And it's cool to think about how Frontier Days was going on while people were driving the Lincoln Highway. Here's a picture of Theodore Roosevelt looking out over the Frontier Days in 1910. There's also exhibits on horse-drawn carriages and wagons, there's the Frontier Days Hall of Fame, and there's memorabilia related to the rodeos and folk art. That was like a carnival with carnival games, lots of stores. There was the rodeo going on, which looks like it had a ton of energy, and Pops got to have experience he was said about.
Those of you guys who followed us know I'm all about the Old West stuff, and they had this whole row of chuck wagons, and I guess they're going to be cooking breakfast in the morning, but they ground me some Arbuckle's coffee, which you need to know about if you're in Cheyenne. Arbuckle's coffee in my hand from a 1898 coffee grinder. Got to taste it, that made my day.
So it was well worth stopping just for that. Now we're heading on. After leaving the festival, we headed downtown to check out more Lincoln Highway history, starting with the Plains Hotel. This hotel was built in 1911 and was a Lincoln Highway mainstay, and I had actually planned to stay here, but because of the festival, everything was either sold out or super expensive. So we just walked around and explored the inside, and it looks like a really cool hotel, so let me know how it is if you stay here on your drive. Heading on, we went across to the Cheyenne Depot Plaza, and we saw a lot of the painted cowboy boots that they have throughout the town. They're 8 foot tall and there are more than 30 of them in the town. You can get a map to see all of them online. Across from the park is the Cheyenne Depot Museum, which we headed into with about 30 minutes to spare before they closed for the day. It's especially cool because it's located inside of an 1880s Union Pacific Railroad depot. Look at how incredible this model train layout is, and it goes like 4 different levels back. While of course there's history and a few exhibits you can see in the museum, I thought the miniature train track that they had built here was the best part. When you leave, look at the view that heads straight down the street towards City Hall. I thought that was pretty cool.
Cheyenne seems like a really cool place to spend some time. We were actually going to spend an extra day here, but it was super expensive with the Frontier Days, so hopefully we can come back and explore more in the future. Now we're heading on Lincoln Highway.
Leaving Cheyenne, we headed towards a couple of the best historic monuments on the road.
So out in the middle of this field is the old cupola from the state capitol building from 1917. There's literally no information as to why it's out here, but they call it Dome on the Range. Dome on the Range, historic cupola from 1917.
It said it was moved to the current site in 2005, but it doesn't say why it was moved there.
I have no idea how long that will last there, but it's certainly a unique site.
As you're pushing up the hill on Interstate 80, be sure to look out on the left side for Tree in the Rock Historic Site.
It's cool to see the remains of this Lincoln Highway marker. Not much is left, but still cool to see it out here.
So this is referred to as Tree Rock, and when people came east on the Lincoln Highway headed west, they were immediately going to be enamored by mountains. But the thing that really stopped them was this little tree that was growing out of this rock. And this has been growing here consistently since the start of the Lincoln Highway in 1913.
It even said that a lot of the early pictures and photographs and postcards all had the little tree on it instead of the mountains. So it's a fun spot to see right here.
There's multiple monuments in this short 5-mile section, with the next being the Ames Monument.
Okay, this is the Ames Monument, built in 1882, dedicated to brothers who were influential in the development of the Transcontinental Railroad, particularly related to the Union Pacific Railroad. And it was built big like this, so as the train went by, you could actually see the monument from the train. Well, in 1901, they changed the route, and the thing that happened is that around that same time, they're trying to build a highway, and so they used the rail bed of the line as kind of the bed for the Lincoln Highway as it was headed west. So it ended up being really helpful in the development of the Lincoln Highway. And the Lincoln Highway used that until about 1930 when the route changed.
As you can no doubt tell, Pops loves the history of the Lincoln Highway, and he spent a lot of time reading about it, which is why I let him take the charge on a lot of these stops.
So there's 2 monuments you want to see here. There's the Henry B. Joy Monument, and then there's the Lincoln Monument.
This statue was put here in 1959 to celebrate the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birthday. It's really interesting. The sculpture itself was made in Mexico City, assembled here, put on top of this tower, which is about 30 feet tall, and it used to be in a different spot, but when I-80 came through in 1969, they moved it here. So when you're driving I-80, you can actually see it from the freeway. There were arguably 2 men who were the most important in the development of the Lincoln Highway. One was a fellow named Carl Fisher, who was the vice president of the original Lincoln Highway Association, but number 1 was Henry Joy. One of the things that he was known for was that they originally wanted to call the Lincoln Highway the Coast to Coast Rock Highway, and he was like, that's crazy. And he finally argued and fought enough to where the Congress named it the Lincoln Highway, but he got real sad later when they started calling it Route 31 and no longer the Lincoln Highway. But this guy was the critically most important person in the development of the Lincoln Highway.
There's also a visitor center right next to the monuments that looks out over the Lincoln Highway and tells you more about how the sculptures were created.
Check it out, we are also standing at the highest point on the Lincoln Highway.
This spot sits at 883 feet above sea level.
We are here and we're heading up to Medicine Bow tonight for our hotel.
You have to stop here on the Lincoln Highway, it's one of the most historic spots. Heading down the hill, we stopped in the town of Laramie for a few minutes to see the Breaking Through statue before continuing on towards Medicine Bow. I would venture to guess that most people who drive the Lincoln Highway choose to skip this section and just stay on I-80, but we wanted to do it because my dad was super excited about the hotel we were staying at that night. On the way out there, you can see the remains of the Fossil Cabin Museum, which unfortunately is in disrepair. This spot is supposedly made of dinosaur bones, which were found nearby in the Dinosaur Graveyard, one of the most important fossil beds in the world in the late 1800s. It's in such bad condition though, I don't know how long it'll be here. And for us, we just continued on towards Medicine Bow.
We are at the Virginian Motel, named after the book by Owen Wister. Very excited to be here.
What's the famous line?
When you call me that, smile.
My dad's a huge fan of the Virginian, and we actually listened to it on audiobook while we were driving this part of the road. So he was very excited to stay here, and he even made a video about it on his channel.
Here's an actual copy of the book here, which is fun.
After exploring for a while, we got checked in, and I honestly think we might have been the only people staying here that night, as all the other rooms were open.
We are in the Owen Wister Suite. Check this out. This is supposedly the actual desk that he wrote some of the story of the Virginian on.
This is not a luxury hotel, but it had 2 bedrooms and a lot of history, so it was fun to explore.
You gonna do some actual writing?
I may do some writing, yeah. I gotta find out some more details about everything in this room.
Pops ended up wanting to do some writing, so I went outside and explored the outside of the hotel. I walked across the street to see the Medicine Bow Museum, which unfortunately was not open while we were there, and just explored the tiny town. I can't express this enough, don't expect a lot if you're coming to this hotel, but how cool is it to be able to stay in a 1911 historic hotel like this? After Pops was done writing, we went down to the bar to have a drink, and it felt like we were stepping back into the Old West when we entered this spot. Plus, all the locals were hanging out and having a good time, and it was very lively, and the drinks were well priced.
And with that, our day on the Lincoln Highway is over. Hopefully we get a good night's sleep tonight. They said it could be haunted, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Morning, today we're heading to Salt Lake City. Also note there's no place for breakfast within an hour of here. That hasn't opened yet, I'm not sure when it opens. And the next spot we can basically eat at is Rollins in about an hour and a half. Saying goodbye to the Virginian Hotel, we headed out towards Rollins in a remote stretch of the Lincoln Highway.
Whether we believed we were in the West or not before, we are definitely in the West now. There's nothing but cattle ranches, mountains.
You go through an area of the world like this, and this is the way that it actually was 100 years ago. Not much changed here. People would have seen the same things we're seeing, basically. There was a sign or signs put along the road where it said, if you break down, gather some bush and start a fire, and someone far away could see you and come and help you and pull you out.
As we make it back to the 80, note that if you do that drive, it is beautiful, but the only things to see out there are the Virginian Hotel and the Fossil Cabin. As you head into the town of Rollins, there's a cool historic gas station, and then there's the Wyoming Frontier Prison that you can see if you're interested. This prison was built in 1901, and it has a museum on the first floor that talks all about the famous prisoners that have been here, the different weapons that they've seen created by the inmates, and has lots of history about Wyoming and even cowboys.
It was bound to happen eventually, but Pops and I got put into jail.
Are you grabbing out of the bars?
I don't know what I'm doing.
We spent about 20 minutes exploring the museum before signing up for one of the tours.
They also have a great historic tour that you can do here, but unfortunately we couldn't record any video on it. But if you're interested in the area's history, it's definitely worth checking out.
As we were heading out, we saw a deer in downtown Rollins, and then we got on the I-80 and headed west. During most of the drive through Wyoming, you're just on the I-80 the entire time, so we put on the Virginian on audiobook and just cruised and took in all the scenery.
This isn't the original sign that was here, but when the original one was lit, it was 100 feet long and it was the largest neon arch sign erected in the Rocky Mountain West. Looks like there's an underground art gallery below the trains. We're gonna check it out.
While you're here, you can see the Art Underground series, or you can go out and walk through the park and check out the depot. There's an old train that you can climb into when it's open, there's a few statues, and then there's a monument to the area where the first coal was mined in the district. On top of that, there's a mural dedicated to the coal miners who lost their lives here.
Unfortunately, there's not a lot to see in the Wyoming area. It's pretty remote, so we're stopping as much as we possibly can, but a lot of today is just driving to Salt Lake City.
I can't stress enough that as you move into Wyoming and then Utah and Nevada, there's not a lot going on out here. It's pretty remote, and so you have to really look to find the Lincoln Highway stuff. That being said, the views out here are incredible of the vast landscape all around you. The next major point of interest on the drive is Tollgate Rock. This historic rock formation in Wyoming has been a key waypoint for travelers spanning different generations, from the 19th century pioneers in covered wagons to the 20th century road trips and automobiles. It really is a striking rock formation, and I can see why people would have used it for westward navigation, especially because it's so different than the rocks that surround it. It's also beautifully situated along the Green River, and it's just a stunning natural part of the drive. As we continued driving, we started seeing the signs for Little America, and we saw hundreds of these as we continued west. It reminded me of Buc-ee's with all the signs leading up to it, and then when you got there, there was parking for big trucks, there was a hotel, and even a cafe.
Little America supposedly has 75-cent ice cream cones. We're gonna go in and see. Look at that, 75-cent ice cream cone. Dare we do an ice cream cheers?
Oh, cheers.
Hey, look at that. I don't know, there's just something about getting a 75-cent ice cream that makes it taste better. Pops is over here making something.
No,
What do
it's
you
funny how they come. You can have it made into a Lincoln Highway sign.
Little America is like a classic slice of Americana, and it's been here since 1934 and has been welcoming Lincoln Highway travelers since then. It also has a unique story with the penguin in its lobby.
So Little America started in the 1930s. Their mascot was a penguin. Admiral Byrd, who was in Antarctica, sent them this penguin. They were excited. He died en route. So instead they stuffed him, and here he stands.
He was supposed to be the live mascot, but he became something else. Little America is also a hotel along the route, so if you need a place to stay, you can stay here. There's a kids playground, there's a store, there's things to eat, so it's definitely a great roadside stop.
It originally became popular because it's an oasis on the drive with so little in the Wyoming area. From Little America is about a 35-minute drive to Fort Bridger's State Historic Site. Originally built as a fur trading post in 1843, it became a key stop for pioneers on the Oregon Trail, Pony Express riders, and later travelers on the Lincoln Highway. It's basically a place where the Old West and early American road tripping history come together, and you can see that through the many different exhibits they have on the property.
Men were committing petty crimes in order to get out of their chores and things that they needed to do here, so they created the punishment horse, where you had to sit on it for hours at a time holding a wooden sword, and Pops is demonstrating.
My crime is that my jokes are not funny.
Too many dad jokes. You have to use the punishment horse.
Right.
After the punishment horse, we put Pops in jail.
I refuse to sit on a punishment horse.
The coolest part of this park is the replica that they created of Jim Bridger's fort. They tried to make it look like what it would have in the 1850s, and it's so cool to walk around and explore, and they even have a shop with things for sale and a docent who's able to answer your questions when you walk out. If you're interested in what it was like for early travelers going west, you definitely need to stop here.
Our last stop at the fort is the museum.
The museum had a lot of history and exhibits, but they actually had one on the Lincoln Highway, and they had a DVD that you can control that told you more about the Lincoln Highway in Wyoming.
Luckily, we haven't looked like this on the Lincoln Highway yet.
I would say this is one of the better history stops on the western portion of the drive.
Before leaving the fort, we're gonna go check out the Lincoln Highway exhibit. Black and orange cabins built in 1929.
When we came, we had no idea they had this Lincoln Highway history, and it was so cool to be able to peek into the different cabins and see how they were restored. It gave you a great taste for what it would have been like to stay here in the 1930s.
This is really cool. And this was the kind of thing they started to build when they just had the campgrounds. They built these little cottages, and they usually were often in the shape of a U.
Continuing on to Evanston, they had an old hotel and they had an information plaque on the Lincoln Highway in Wyoming. We missed a lot of these stops because they weren't on any of the maps that we were looking at, but in case you're coming through here and you want to try to see one, here they are. Man, we are just crushing states. State number 11. By this point, we were doing hundreds of miles a day in our drive, and Pops was scouring the books trying to find anything that we could stop at. Luckily, we hit the jackpot as we entered Utah by finding this awesome section of the Lincoln Highway that went through Echo Canyon. We found it in the map that we picked up at Fort Bridger, and it had over 30 points of interest along the canyon that you could see. These range from interesting rock formations to stone walls that were created to protect travelers. By far, the most unique thing we saw was a stop called Billboard Bluff.
With the arrival of the railroad, right, you got to have advertising along the way. And so these were advertised. And so you can see the one back there says Plantation Bitters. That was an example of one of them.
It is pretty cool to see that they're still in good condition, probably because it's not super easy to get up there.
Even if you're doing a road trip that isn't the Lincoln Highway, I would recommend getting off and doing this portion of the trip as you head into Utah. The drive through Echo Canyon is incredible, with beautiful rock formations and so much history to see. We even saw a few more billboard rocks while we were driving with advertisements on them. There's a lot of Pony Express history on this section as well, and then when you head to the bottom, be sure to go right to see a few more stops. These include this post office and this awesome gas station cafe motel sign, before making it all the way out to Witches Rocks, which is the last stop on this section. Witches Rocks is a set of pinnacles that many people thought resembled witches. I don't know if I see it, but let me know what you think in the comments. Leaving Echo Canyon behind, we headed out on Echo Dam Road and went around the Echo Reservoir as we made our way down to Salt Lake City. We were surprised to see smoke in the distance and saw a fire on the other side of the road near the freeway, but after we researched it, nothing really came of it and it went out quickly. Another long day, but we've made it to Salt Lake City and we're gonna grab dinner at the Dodo. The Dodo has been here for over 40 years and it's one of the top rated restaurants in this part of Salt Lake City. I ended up getting the stroganoff and Pops got a quesadilla with meat in it, and we both loved our dishes. It could be that we were really hungry from not eating a lot that day as well.
We went kind of big here because we were told that you have to have the pie, and we don't know when we'll be in Salt Lake City again, so Pop's got a banana cream cheesecake, banana cheesecake I think, and I got coconut coffee cake caramel. We're gonna pass out after this.
It's amazing.
I mean, work hard, play hard, that's kind of our motto, right?
Alright, and with that insane meal that Pops and I just ate, that's it for today. We'll see you tomorrow.
We started the day with a healthy option. Just kidding, we went and got donuts.
Those are crazy looking donuts. This is the Gold Digger, and Pop's got maple bourbon, and these donuts are literally as big as your face.
I do have a big face though.
You have a big face if that's a big donut.
I love brown butter anything. What's always good in my book is a little bit of salt. And then there's gold flakes on top, which I don't know why, but it's a good donut.
Good donuts and coffee. Now we're leaving Salt Lake City and heading towards Nevada.
If you're interested in things to do in Salt Lake City, you can see the link in the description, but we headed out and went past the Great Salt Air. The original Salt Air was supposed to be like the Coney Island of Salt Lake City with a boardwalk and entertainment, but this is now the third iteration and it's basically just a concert venue, which we couldn't access when we drove by. So we just headed on and continued to Great Salt Lake State Park to explore a little bit.
We made it to the Great Salt Lake.
We started by walking out to the main viewpoint to read some of the information plaques, and what we saw startled us a little bit.
Look at all of these spiders that we found. They are everywhere out here. We were told that these are western spotted orb weavers and that they're generally harmless to humans, but I'm gonna tell you, I was not about to find out by getting any closer to these spiders than I needed to. There's probably 1,000 of them around here. We are here. You can see how massive that lake is. I mean, it basically looks like an ocean when you're looking out there. The spiders required a sacrifice, so we're leaving, Pops. We'll see you later, Pops. Saying goodbye to the spiders in the Great Salt Air, we continued on towards Nevada and to some of the most remote sections of this drive. As we were coming to an area called the Bonneville Salt Flats, we saw a unique piece of art on the side of the road and decided to pull off. Created by an artist in the 1980s, it's an 87-foot tall concrete tree. It has 6 colorful spheres at the top, supposedly representing the fruits of the desert, and it's definitely a unique contrast between the stark white flats and the art. This thing is called the Tree of Life, and it's pretty weird to see out in this desolate salt flat. Pop says he thinks these are the leaves of the tree that have fallen off.
Well, I'm quick to say, when I see art like this, I'm quick to say I don't understand it. I don't like to judge it necessarily, but I would say I don't understand it. It's certainly unique. So he left his mark with this incredibly unique piece in the middle of the salt.
Heading on, we made it to the area known as the Bonneville Salt Flats, and we continued until we saw the rest stop on the right-hand side where you could pull out and you could actually go out on the salt flats if you were interested.
So we are now at the Bonneville Salt Flats, and look at this spot. It's just incredible how extensive it is. And this is the place where you always hear about people setting the land speed records right out here. Amazing.
I keep feeling like we're in the snow and I could pick up and throw a snowball at Pops, but unfortunately, cannot do that here.
But I can throw a salt ball!
This place is wild. I have been to Badwater and Death Valley, and this has got to be 100 times the size. Basically salt flats as far as you can see. Very cool stuff. The speed record out here was set by a jet-powered car called the Thrust 2, and it was over 700 miles per hour. I believe there are times you can drive your own car on it in certain areas where that's allowed, but I'm not really sure how that works, and I didn't want to drive my car anyway, as the salt can be pretty corrosive. So for us, we continued on, and the salt eventually gave way to the desert again. Pops, what state is that?
That was Nevada.
And,
number 12. That was number 12.
Number 12. Our first stop in Nevada was to see a very large roadside attraction. This is supposedly the world's largest cowboy. Pops, does it make you feel like more of a cowboy to be next to the world's largest?
Well, I'm larger than life as a cowboy too. And his brother lives in Las Vegas.
Known as Wendover Will, he was created in 1952 and he stands 63 feet tall. From here, the Lincoln Highway heads south till it connects with the loneliest road, Highway 50. We got a big storm ahead of us in the remote Nevada desert.
Storm in the desert, baby. That sounds amazing.
Storm in the desert. As you're watching this storm, note that this is not the original alignment of the Lincoln Highway and that it actually went a different way from Salt Lake City. As I was researching it though, it seemed pretty hard to follow that one as there's lots of private property, so this is technically the 3rd generation part of the route that we're doing. It really started to come down once we got into that storm we were driving towards.
It's a really good call by Josh too, to just let the vent open so we can smell the rain on the desert, which is nice.
It's pretty hard to beat the rain on the desert. That would be a good candle smell right there. The drive from West Wendover to Ely, Nevada is about 2 hours, and there's not really anything to stop at along the way. The one thing I will mention is the McGill Drugstore Museum, but unfortunately that wasn't open when we came through. Eventually we made it to Ely and we got to our first stop in the city right before it closed. We've made it with on and off rain on the way into our first town, and we're stopping at the White Pine Museum. The White Pine Museum is one of the best for keeping the history of Eastern Nevada and has everything from American Indian heritage to Pony Express history. You never think you would see a Titanic sinks newspaper in Ely. There it is. This is the main thing you want to see while you're here, the giant short-faced bear they have. This bear used to roam North America and weighed up to 1,500 pounds, and some believe that it's over 10,000 years old. All right, who do you think would win? Pops or the giant bear, the cave bear? Let us know in the comments.
He's got a bigger fist than me.
That's the only issue you have. Other than that, you'd be good.
I would say, hey, look over there.
Don't just visit the inside though, there are a lot of exhibits to see on the outside of the museum as well.
And this is our first Lincoln Highway sign we've seen since we made it to Nevada. This depot was built in 1906 and served the area for 40 years.
This is the Cherry Creek Railroad Depot, which sat about 53 miles north of Ely. Cherry Creek now is just a ghost town, but in 1990, a local elementary school raised $11,000 to move the historic structure here.
This is one of the oldest cabins in Ely. It was built in the 1880s.
That's what's so cool about this museum is that you can just walk around and you can see so many historic artifacts that have all been preserved and kept on display for you to see here.
All right, I'm gonna find Pops who got stuck looking at old pictures, and then we're gonna either head back to the hotel or go explore, depending on what the rain does.
After saying goodbye to the museum, there's a thrift store that was still open, so we popped in to grab some shoes for the shoe tree tomorrow.
All right, I think I'm gonna go with these.
And then we headed over to the historic Hotel Nevada, which was our home base for the rest of the night.
What's up? Welcome to our epic room. Look at this beautiful kitchenette area, 2 couches, gorgeous
A TV for me to beat you in video games later.
Only we're talking about important things. Gorgeous view of the mountains. And then you come in here, we got these 2 great beds. Across the street is downtown right here in front of us. Not bad at all.
And the best part is that it was $95 tonight. How do you beat that?
Yep.
Let's go get something to eat.
When you leave the hotel, be sure to check out their Walk of Fame, showcasing some of the people who have stayed here since it opened in 1929.
Jimmy Stewart, Ingrid Bergman, Wayne Newton, President Lyndon B. Johnson.
And then across the street from the hotel, there's a few different casinos, one which had a very unique dinner spot that we decided to try.
So Pops found us this dinner place where you eat inside of a cell block.
Yeah.
Looks like you eat fancy inside of a cell block though.
Nice, yeah.
We were the only people here, and it was a little bit pricier than I anticipated, so we had no idea what we were getting ourselves into.
You notice how when I let Pops pick, we're eating in a cell block and we're eating $50 steaks?
Gotta take my opportunity when I get it. You know, I'm not offered it very often. So.
I love places like this, and I just kept getting up to explore as it was so cool to see how they'd created these different rooms inside of the cell blocks.
I went with Mediterranean chicken and Pops went with some type of steak. What'd you get?
Filet.
There's a lot of food on this table. They give you a lot here. Salad and bread and all the sides. I have to say, Ely is coming through. I did not expect to have this good of a meal while sitting in a cell block in the middle of nowhere, Nevada.
Yeah, this filet is fabulous. One of my best I've ever had. I think it's really excellent.
So hopefully if you come here, it's 2 thumbs up, but it definitely is from Pops and I.
So this might be the 11th day that we've been on the Lincoln Highway. We've had a great time, and we will see you more tomorrow.
If you're staying at the Hotel Nevada like we were, don't miss the opportunity to go out and see it at night. There's just something epic about seeing the neon lights like this, and it reminds me of what I would think that old school Vegas would have looked like.
Starting our day at my favorite museum on this stretch of the road, the Nevada Northern Railway Museum. We are riding a train this morning.
I think this is awesome to be able to ride a train, especially in these hills, deserty hills. Would be cool.
And here's our train that we're taking up into the mountains.
Known as the Nevada Northern Railway Complex, this site is supposedly one of the best preserved early 20th century railroad yards in the nation. If you decide to ride the train like us, be sure to give yourself some time to explore the museum before it leaves, including seeing the statue of Dirt the Cat, a loved cat who used to hang out in the engine shop.
This room is exactly the way it was left in 1983.
We spent some time exploring the upper and lower floor, and then we just walked around the exterior while waiting for our train to board.
Look who's driving our train today. Conductor Pops.
There'll be no horseplay on this train.
Right on time, our conductor called all aboard and we were able to enter the train and find our spot.
Get your pick of the whole train, Pops.
Yeah.
There's only like 10 people on our entire 3 train car adventure today, so we basically got the place to ourselves.
It's nice to be able to sit outside. It'll be hot, but it'll be nice.
That bell signals that we are leaving. Look at that primo spot right there.
Depending on when you're here, they have all sorts of different train rides that you can pick from. They have a Santa ride at Christmas, they have a 4th of July fireworks train, they have sunset trains, haunted ghost trains. There's a lot of different adventures that you can go on. Ours was just an excursion train ride on one of their diesel trains, and we went out towards Valley Vista. During certain days of the week, they actually take a steam train out, and that would be a really cool one to ride on, but that's not what we had when we were here.
This is so cool. It really does feel like you're in the Old West, just going out through the country. I don't know, I'm really into it. Are you still living your best life out here?
This is fantastic. So we're reading the book, The Virginian, as we go, and they talk about riding the train. This is what the West would look like, except for the power lines. So it's really fun to experience that. It's like stepping back in history or something.
Our train did about 45 minutes out towards the town of McGill before turning around and heading back the way we came.
They ran this train line until 1978, and that's when the mine stopped, and then they stopped using it as much.
Depending on how much time you have to do this drive, this is a longer excursion to do, but both my dad and I loved being able to see something historic like this and to be able to experience it firsthand. 90 minutes later, we were arriving back at the train station, and if you want to, they'll actually give you a guided tour of the engine room. Because of how many stops we had to do today, we decided not to go on the tour, but we did go walk in and explore it a little bit ourselves.
This is the one that we were so impressed with last time we came here. It's the snowplow train.
This is a cool spot to be for so many levels, but I wish I could tell you how it smells. It smells like an old diesel work area. It's really cool.
It's just amazing to be able to see inside of some of these trains and to see them actually working on it. You never see anything like that. Such a fun and relaxing morning. The train really didn't go out to anywhere, but it was just incredible to see the landscape and to feel that kind of Old West vibe, and then seeing the machine shop afterward and seeing them working on the trains. This is just a really great stop.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. You guys know I love the Old West stuff, and it gave you that feel that you were going through this kind of untouched country headed towards somewhere in the Old West on a train. It's really cool.
And now we're heading out again on the Lincoln Highway.
As you say goodbye to Ely, which is one of the largest towns in this part of Nevada, it's about an hour and 15 minutes of remote wilderness before you make it to Eureka. During this section, you'll pass by the remains of some mining claims. You may see a Lincoln Highway sign along the road, but basically it's just horizon that stretches out endlessly in front of you, broken by rugged mountains and the occasional summit that you pass over. As you approach the town of Eureka, driving down from one of the many summits, note the grade of the road that you're driving at, and note that this can be a pretty dangerous area to drive in the winter, especially if there's snow or ice.
We've made it to Eureka, one of the main towns along the route, and this is the famous hotel where Pop saw a ghost.
I did not see a ghost. You can look at that in a different video when we talk about that. But
Up here.
The town of Eureka is a cool spot to stop as there's a lot of historic things that you can do here.
This is the original Lincoln Highway sign that I saw in 2020 before we even knew that this was a route, especially not a route we were going to be driving 4 years later.
yeah, it's cool to come back and look at it with a totally different set of lenses as to what we're seeing now.
There's also a note that this section of Lincoln Highway is part of a General Motors section that they paid for. It's 22 miles long.
When we entered the courthouse, we were able to get our official survival guide of the loneliest road, which you can get stamped along the route.
This thing is really fun. This is something that should be done with the Lincoln Highway.
I agree. We had one on Route 66 too, remember?
We did.
This courthouse is incredible to see as it's still in use and it was built in 1880.
Pops is over there waiting for them to hear his case.
My favorite place to visit in Eureka is the Opera House, which is right across the street from the courthouse.
Fortunately, the Opera House is closed until August 1st, so we're not able to see it. The Opera House is incredible though, and something you definitely want to see, so I'll play some clips from last time we were here.
The Opera House was built in 1880 and the structure was fully restored in 1993. It's been many things over the years, including a motion picture hall in 1915, and even a community center for the town during the mining boom era. Now it's mostly used as a convention center and it can hold around 300 people. Leaving the Opera House, the town felt a lot more dead than it did when we came through here 4 years ago, but we were able to find one more business open. Our last order of business is the Eureka Depot, a coffee shop that opened since last time we went through. This coffee shop had a large dining area, and I was told that it's used for meetings by many of the locals. It was poppin' when we went, with a dozen people there and a couple different people working behind the counter. That's a really great spot. They make all their own syrups, which is surprising to find in a remote Nevada town. Plus the people are incredibly friendly. It did say on the Eureka sign that it's the friendliest town on the loneliest road, and I have to say everybody we've met has been very friendly. Heading on towards Austin. Leaving Eureka, it's about an hour and 10 minutes to get to the next small town of Austin. Along the way, there are some hot springs that you can go and soak in, but unfortunately for us, the road was washed out and it hadn't been repaired yet, so we weren't able to make it there. Check it out, there's a heart in the clouds right there. Do you see it? It's on its side. Do you see it, Pops?
Barely. It is kind of sideways.
After entering the town of Austin, the first thing you'll see is the Gridley's store, which was built in 1863. The building has a unique history which comes from a story about a sack of flour which was sold for donations to the Sanitary Fund, a Civil War forerunner of the American Red Cross. The flour sack was sold over and over again throughout Nevada and California, and it ended up raising $275,000. I was actually excited to see this building open as it was closed last time we came through here, and now it's a town library, which is a really cool way to update an old building but to keep it for the town to enjoy, so that was fun to see. Driving into Austin, we are greeted with what we've come to expect in some of the small towns on the Lincoln Highway. Basically places that felt abandoned and that were no longer in operation. This looks like at some point in time it was a welcome center or it's becoming one, but there's definitely nobody you can talk to right now. There are a whole bunch of things you can off-road to if you're interested. Going down this road where the hot springs was, it was closed when we came, but I'm sure that's not always the case. So that's about all that's open today in Austin, other than the castle that we're gonna go to right now. And note, when people say that we travel and things are not open, everything could even say it's open and not be open on roads like this. So you see what you can see and you just make the most of it. Luckily, on the outskirts of Austin, there's one of the more unique historic sites you can see on this part of the route, and it's always there.
Stokes Castle was built by a guy named Anson Stokes, who was a wealthy banker and also silver miner. This place was a huge place for silver in the late 1800s. In 1897, he had this place built. It was based on a place that he'd seen outside of Rome, and this is like an exact copy of a tower that he saw outside of Rome. It says the family lived here for 1 month, and then later came back a couple times, but then ended up selling it when he sold all his interest in silver mining and never really came back ever again. It's now privately owned, and it's really kind of in disrepair. This is about the best you can do is see it from the outside. As you can see, one of the best things about this spot are these vistas that supposedly you can see as far away as like 100 miles.
There was a fence around the structure, but there was a huge hole cut out of it, so you were able to walk right in and see the inside if you wanted to. I don't know if they'll leave this open or if they're going to come and close it up. There's also an old piece of mining equipment out on the hillside. I was kind of hoping this would look different in the last 4 years since we've been here, maybe a little bit more restored, but it is exactly the same. As we were leaving Stokes Castle, someone told us that the Little Blue Bird turquoise shop was open, so we headed back into the town to go see it. According to the website, this is an art gallery and a shop, and it uses turquoise that's mined from around the local area. Honestly, I was pretty impressed. It was a cool place to walk around, and the prices were reasonable for what they were selling. Check it out, there's an anaconda that's 20 feet long, the skin of an anaconda in here. This is an incredibly cool spot with lots of different rocks, and I'm getting some geodes for my kids to break open. So if you're driving the Lincoln Highway and looking for a unique souvenir, hopefully this is open when you come through. Leaving Austin, it's about an hour drive to our next stop at Middlegate Station. Along the way though, there's some interesting Pony Express history that you can see and that I definitely recommend stopping at. This is known as Rock Creek or Cold Springs Station, and it was operated from 1861 to 1869. Here, Pony Express riders could find a place to sleep, they could get fresh horses, There was blacksmith services here and even wagon repair facilities. When the line was abandoned in 1869, then this spot went along with it, and basically all you can see now are just the remains of some of the rock structures. As we approached Middlegate Station, it was time for another cherished tradition, the shoe tree.
Last time we did this, we took 3 to 4 tries each. I think we're gonna do better this time. What are you predicting?
I predict as bad or worse.
There it is, the infamous shoe tree. All right, I got my shoes to donate to the shoe tree. You got yours, Pops?
Look at this. Suede wingtips, orange soles, way better.
You should keep those. As the senior member of our group, do you want to go first or second?
I'll go first, but I would like to say, first of all, this tree has done nothing to deserve this.
Are you gonna throw it on the really easy one, or are you gonna try to throw it at the high one? That high up there? Look at Babe Ruth calling his shot.
I said, I don't want to do the walk of shame down here. You know, I could just go like this.
That's what I'd expect from you. That didn't even go anywhere near the tree.
I'm trying to go up there.
All right, let's see. Oh!
Yeah!
Oh!
Look at that. Great spot. You can see them. That was good. There's no competition here. Let's see how the B team does now.
Going for this right here, which looks like it probably is not a good idea.
Well, at least it'll be easy to retrieve right down here when you miss. Okay. What's your comment about my first throw?
Oh, that was so close.
It wasn't close at all. It bounced off the bottom. If he can't beat me, he's going to throw them at me.
Oh!
Not a bad shot.
Way
Look
better
here.
than yours.
Hopefully it gets where we can see it.
All right, let us know in the comments if Pop's throwing it at the leaves and taking the easy approach in 2 shots, or my more difficult approach in 3 shots is better.
Yeah, do that.
Also, props to anyone who got it that high up in the tree. That is very impressive. You're playing at a different level than Pops and I. All right, now it's time to get the monster burger.
I had no idea whether the shoe tree would still be a thing, but I was surprised to still see it going strong. If I had to bet, there was probably 300 to 400 shoes here. From there is about a 5-minute drive to our next stop and one of our favorites on this portion of the road, Middlegate Station.
We're doing one of our favorite stops. We stopped at the Middlegate Bar right here in order to get a monster burger. Wait do you see this burger? It's incredible.
Welcome to Middlegate, the middle of nowhere, elevation 4,600, population 17. They crossed out the 18.
Middlegate Station really does feel like an oasis in the middle of the loneliest road, and what this place is known for is something called the Middlegate Monster.
We didn't add $1 last time we were here, or else we could search for it, so we're adding $1 this time. Beautiful. All right. They said that Pops could have a ladder, but as you can tell, he can reach it without even trying. All right, if you want to find our $1, head over to this corner and then just look up right there.
While we were working on decorating our $1, they were working on creating the monstrosity that we were about to eat.
So Josh does drone shots. Here is a cheeseburger drone shot. There you go.
Beautiful. It's way easier too.
Just as easy, just as good as his drone shot.
Check it out. It's got eyes, nose, and the tomato is a mouth. It is a legit monster. That is so amazing. And here's Pops demonstrating.
It's as big as my head. Look at this monster. Pop's on the right. Or the left. I don't know.
Yeah, Pops on the right.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
I'm going to attack this.
Oh man. That was a strong bite right there. Did you get any meat though?
That is delicious. You could think that this is just some gimmick, you know, that it's so huge. But it is delicious. We were shocked the last time about how good it is too, and once again, fabulous.
I agree. You don't even have to take our word for it. If you look at the Google reviews, this place has fantastic reviews, and it's in the middle of nowhere. The burgers are that good and well worth coming for. but you only need one for 2 big men, so you might even need one for 3 to 4 people.
You could do that.
Monster burger!
After getting through as much of the burger as we possibly could, it was time to say goodbye to Middlegate Station and continue the road trip.
Also, in case you're wondering, they do have an electric car charger here. I don't know how well it works, but they have one.
There's some cool opportunities for pictures here, including a great Loneliest Road sign and a sign that says both the Lincoln Highway and the Pony Express historic route. For us though, we just continued west towards Sand Mountain Recreational Area, which is about 25 minutes drive away. Again, this is remote with a couple passes that you go over, but I think this is a cool part of the section, seeing the sand dunes come into view and seeing the salt flats out in front of you. If you're interested in off-roading, then Sand Mountain Recreation Area seems like it'd be a pretty incredible place for that. But for us, we just drove up, took a couple pictures, and then backtracked to go see the Pony Express ruins.
If you're looking for the best preserved Pony Express site, this is the best one that we found last time we were here.
From where you park, it's about a 10-minute walk out to the ruins themselves.
So here's what this structure looks like from above, and then you can see the remains of the walls right in front of me. The station was built in 1860 and it was used until 1861 when the telegraph replaced it.
Most of the other Pony Express sites along the route are not open and you can only see them through a fence. But what I like about this one is that it's completely open and that you can walk in, walk through where the different rooms were, and get a better understanding of what life would have been like.
That sign back there has a diary from one of the people who actually visited here. He said life at the station was not bad, it was wretched. There's lots of Pony Express history on the route, but if you want the best example of something that you can still see, this is definitely what we found to be it.
As we left the area and headed towards Fallon, we encountered a big dust storm, and I thought it was pretty interesting, so I wanted to play the full time lapse here. It's crazy to just see it come out of nowhere and then to basically have no visibility for a little bit before it opened back up.
This is our last stop of the day. We're gonna see if we can do it before the rain comes in over there. It's Grimes Point Archaeological Area.
Look how beautiful it is over there with the rain coming down. So cool.
It's really hard to beat a desert sunset. Hopefully that video of the time lapse going through the storm looked as good as it looked to us while we were driving it.
The hike along Grimes Point is a true gem on this drive, as it's amazing to be able to see how many petroglyphs they have on this short trail. It's less than a mile round trip, but along the way, keep your eyes peeled as you'll see them on many of the different rocks, especially when you get to the top area and start doing the loop.
Here's some examples of the different ones that you can see on the trail. I mean, I'm assuming these are all the older ones. Pretty cool.
It's hard for me to ever know whether these are legit petroglyphs or whether there's something that somebody did more recently, but I did read that the ones on the dark rocks are supposed to be older, and it's just cool to wander around and see them all.
Right near the end of the trail it says ensuring success, and I think this is probably the best one that we've seen on the whole trail. Epic way to end the day, exploring and finding petroglyphs, seeing the lightning, and just enjoying the beautiful desert sunset. That's it for today. We'll see you tomorrow.
Even though I said we were done, we actually decided that we wanted to spend a little bit more time sitting and watching the lightning, and we were trying to command a lightning strike perfectly so we could get a video.
Oh, that was pretty close. It was right when you turned around, didn't it? I don't know. I think Pops might have got it on that last one. You wouldn't believe how many times we tried to do that.
We were enjoying watching the lightning and the rain come down until we got to our hotel, and there's no power in our hotel.
Eventful day.
After about 2 hours sitting in the dark, the power did eventually come on, and that was the end of our day on the Lincoln Highway. We woke up the next morning and started our day by going to Stone Cabin Coffee. This is not what I expected to see in Fallon, and I loved every minute of it with all of the different animals in an old log cabin and great coffee to go along with it.
I do want to note that this is also where the Top Gun school is. I tried to see if there's anything I could do related to that here, and I can't without base access, but it is cool to note that the Top Gun school is here.
From Fallon, we headed towards Reno, stopping to see an old market grocery sign. and then stopping to see a giant turtle made out of boulders. There's not a lot of information about this other than that it was built in 2014 with the purpose of it being unmovable.
This is cute. It says, "I am a painted rock snake. Paint your own rock and help me grow."
On the way into Reno, we decided to stop in the town of Sparks first to see Last Chance Joe and a historical museum. Last Chance Joe is a 35-foot tall character that was built in 1952 to be outside of a casino and a cafe. And then when it closed, they were going to get rid of him, and he was adopted by the Sparks Heritage Museum. The Sparks Heritage Museum focuses on the area's history, but if you're looking for history on the Lincoln Highway, definitely stop here as they have a small exhibit about it.
Here's the route. We started all the way over here and we are right here.
The Lincoln Highway exhibit mainly focuses on the route through Nevada, but it has some interesting photographs and antiques to see, and anytime we saw a Lincoln Highway exhibit in a museum, we were excited.
Here's an example of a water bag that they would use when they were going through the desert in order to hold their water. It's a tiny little exhibit here, but it's cool just to see it represented at all, so that's awesome. Good stop. You can see Last Chance Joe, and you can get to see a museum with a little bit of Lincoln Highway history.
As we headed through the historic downtown Sparks, it was cool to see some Lincoln Highway signs on the side of the road. And there were lots of old signs designating the different hotels and motels, such as the Pony Express Lodge, the Sandman Motel, and even the Ferris Apartments. It made me feel like I was on Route 66 again to see all these historic hotel signs.
Right on the corner of East 4th Street and Spokane, there's this awesome mural that was put in 2014, and it's kind of like a modern artistic take on the Lincoln Highway mural. I'm really digging it. This is cool to see something like this, especially something that's a little bit newer artistic style, showing that they might still like the Lincoln Highway a little bit in Reno Sparks area.
Next up, we headed into the town of Reno, and we're only doing a couple spots in this video, but I have an entire video on Reno in the description you can check out.
This old arch was originally erected on Virginia Street to celebrate the completion of the Lincoln Highway. This isn't the arch that most people take a picture with when they come to Reno, but it's so cool that they saved this historic arch and they still have it on display for you to see.
It was already late in the day, but we hadn't really eaten much, so we decided to head to Peg's Glorified Ham and Eggs for brunch. This spot was on Esquire's list of best breakfast places in the United States.
Look at this crazy meal. It's a skillet with beans and a slaw and salsa and an omelet and hash browns. That is an insane amount of food. And then Pop's got basically a hamburger.
We both really liked our meals here, and I could see why it won so many awards.
Before continuing south on Lincoln Highway, we wanted to stop at the National Automobile Museum in Reno. It's definitely one of the best car museums I've ever been to.
This is one of those car museums you could spend a few hours in, as it seems like it has everything on display.
Here we are, Pops. We're at the 1925 to 1950, which is when they would actually have been driving.
Yeah, actually a little past that. It would be even earlier, some of the cars.
Some of them would be earlier, yeah. Plus you throw in some of these for good measure, the 1915 to 1920s.
These might be the ones that are more likely, especially at the early stages. Maybe we'll get lucky and find an old Packard out here. That was one of the original ones they used.
This is a 1914 Tesla. As in it's an electric car. I know we've talked about this, Pops, but can you even imagine taking one of these things on the Lincoln Highway?
Well, there's so many things that we learned about how you had to drive it, even up the hill backwards sometimes because of the way the gas station was with the carburetor and such, so it was not easy.
This is one of the most prestigious automobile museums in the United States, and it has over 240 rare cars in its collection.
This is a 1921 Rolls-Royce made out of copper.
Of course, there's lots more to see in the museum, including an entire section dedicated to all of the cars that they have from different movies over the years.
I keep trying to tell him that we don't need his picture in this, and he keeps insisting that he wants his picture in the Barbie car.
This is the nicest car in the museum right here. I need my picture.
I can't even believe you fit in that thing. Can you stretch your legs out?
I used to have one like this, but I sold it.
Leaving Reno, there's two different alignments, one that goes through Truckee and another that goes through South Lake Tahoe. We're going to go to South Lake Tahoe, but we detoured a little bit to see these historic Lincoln Highway bridge rails.
Here's some photos of the original bridge where these came from. It's so cool that they saved them and that they put them here for you to see.
These rails and the information about them are off a small pullout on the right side of the road, and you can only access them if you're heading east. So if you're heading west, you need to go up to the next exit, turn around, get back on the freeway, and then you can get off and see them. After our short detour, we headed back to Reno and then headed south towards Carson City. We decided to take another detour on the way and head up to Virginia City though, as we love exploring that little town.
We've made it to Virginia City. First stop, the Comstock load, and then we're gonna go explore and see what we can find. There's gold in them there hills.
We started our time in Virginia City by heading to the Way It Was Museum.
Apparently at one point in time in the city, they had a wildcat versus a dog fight. I think would win, a wildcat or a dog?
Depends on the dog, how big the dog was.
Even though the museum's small, it has a lot of information about the town's past, including great artifacts, photos, and lots of mining equipment you can see.
This is an underground exact scale model of all of the different shafts, criss-cuts, drifts, and inclines of the mine.
Sometimes when you're digging deep, you will unearth a monster.
After leaving the museum, we headed out to explore the main downtown street, which is often voted one of the top 10 historic main streets in America. For us, our first stop was the roasting house, as it had been a long road trip and we needed a second cup of coffee for the morning.
All right, our coffee is coming so we can recharge, but if you want to, there's an awesome view out in the back and a great place to sit. Yay. 14 days with you is a little too much to handle without coffee.
Pretty much same feeling here.
After we got our second win with another cup of coffee, we headed out to explore the rest of the town, starting with the Bucket of Blood Saloon, which has been here since 1876. While the name of the saloon sounds a little sinister, the bar couldn't be anything further from that. It's a charming spot that feels like you walked into history, and it has a lot of different tables and often has live music on the weekends. It was too early for us to get a drink, but it was still cool to be able to pop into it.
This is just a cool town. There's so much history, so many interesting things to do. It's good for pictures. It's just a fun place to spend a little bit of time.
Across the street, you'll find the Delta Saloon, which is home to the Suicide Table, another interesting antique in Virginia City. You can read the full story of the table online, but basically there were 3 different people who died based on the results of the gambling that happened on this table. Following that, the last main thing you'll want to stop into is the Silver Queen. Here you can see the 15-foot Silver Queen, which has 3,261 Comstock silver dollars in it.
Look at this amazing thing made out of silver coins. Wow.
While we could have spent more time in Virginia City, we had a lot more things we wanted to do today, so we took the 30-minute drive down to Carson City.
We made it to Carson City. We got a few stops here before we continue on to South Lake Tahoe.
We started our time in Carson City by heading over to the U.S. Mint Building, which is where we learned about the Lincoln Highway on our first drive through the loneliest road.
The Lincoln Highway, the first marked coast-to-coast federal highway. Now US 50 in San Francisco, 30 in Salt Lake City, and 1 in Philadelphia.
The Carson City Mint Building is now part of the Nevada State Museum, which is one of my favorite museums in this area.
Last time I was in this museum, I told Pops to watch out for this beaver because he had bloody teeth. And lots of people told me that beavers have iron on their enamel, and that's what leads to the red. So, not bloody, iron.
Yep, I do read YouTube comments, and I saw probably 150 comments about the bloody teeth beaver I mentioned in the first video. If you're interested in mining or Nevada State history at all, then this spot should definitely be on your list. The exhibits here are fantastic and really well laid out.
There's another one of those water bags they use for crossing the desert, and then this talks about how there was 3 major roads that went through Nevada by 1925, the Lincoln Highway being one of them. That's basically the only thing on the Lincoln Highway though, right there. This is coin press number 1, and it minted its first coin February 11th, 1870. It was the only coin press in operation for the first 5 years. If you come at the right time on the weekends, you can actually see them continuing to use this to mint coins. The last thing you should see at the museum is to go all the way down into the basement and go into the mining exhibit. Do you notice who's not with me right now? Now, the bottom floor of this museum is a mining museum, and I didn't even remember, but Pops remembered when he came to this museum. He said, that's the one with the mining exhibit down in the bottom, and he did not want to come down. This is a cool exhibit. It really feels like you're in a mine. Props to the museum for making it and for scaring Pops into not coming down. That's an incredible museum. It's very interactive because great exhibits, lots of history. It is a little bummer though that a lot of the Lincoln Highway history, especially in areas like that, is completely gone. It would have been cool to see an exhibit on that here, but get what you get. Before heading into California, we decided to stop and visit the Nevada State Capitol building. This is an old building that's still in use, and it was built in 1869. Here's the Capitol building we're in right now. There's no access to that dome part, but it's still a cool old building. Nevada is battle-born. It enters the Union during the Civil War. It's interesting that they moved the Senate and the legislature down the street a little bit, and so they made that into a museum. That's pretty cool. This Elkhorn chair was used by Teddy Roosevelt when he visited the Capitol in 1903. This is one of the smaller Capitol buildings, and it's pretty easy to see it in about 30 minutes. And with that, we head towards our last state on this Lincoln Highway road trip into South Lake Tahoe. As you leave Reno towards Lake Tahoe, the road heads up into the mountains and it gives you some amazing views before cresting over and seeing Lake Tahoe out in the distance. For our first stop, we made it over to an incredibly difficult place to park, which is the trailhead for Cave Rock. We were able to secure a spot at Cave Rock and we were going for a hike. Pop said in the previous video that one of the things he wants to see is Lake Tahoe, and now you're seeing it for the first time. What do you think?
Lake Tahoe, it's beautiful. It's humongous. I can't believe it. Yeah, I'm very excited to see this for the first time.
Cave Rock Trailhead is notoriously difficult to park at. There's just only 5 or 6 parking spots, so it can be a challenging thing to do, but look at these views already. It's an incredible hike for sure. The other thing that makes this trail so popular is that it's less than a mile round trip. There's the first view of Cave Rock, and that's the Lincoln Highway right below it. The single track hugs the side of the mountain as you go in and out of the trees, making your way over to Cave Rock. The last part of this is definitely scrambling, but even if you don't want to scramble, I mean, look at this view right here. You can just come on an easy hike to right here and get this view. And this is the view on the other side. Pops is staying down here at the base, but I'm gonna go up and show you the views. So if you want to make it to the very top, then this is the scramble that you have to do right here. While it's not particularly difficult, you do have to use your hands to pull you up some of the small rocks, and there is some exposure on both sides, which could be a lot for some people. Made it to the top of Cave Rock. How do you beat those views? I've been up here so many times, but it's especially cool this time to be looking down on the Lincoln Highway we're driving while I'm at the top. The top of the rock is pretty small and it's only really good for a dozen or so people up here, but because of how difficult it is to park, I've never had it be too busy when I've been at the top. I don't want to pull myself away, the views are just insane up here, but we're heading into South Lake Tahoe to get some dinner.
Lake Tahoe is incredibly beautiful, and the mountains around the outside, just gorgeous. I can't believe Lincoln Highway's going right by it there too. That's just really cool. Yeah, I'm delighted here.
Heading into South Lake Tahoe, we crossed over into California, which is our last state of the drive. And then we headed over to one of my favorite restaurants in the area, McDuff's Public House.
Pops, we didn't see the sign, but what state are we in now?
It's got to be the last one. That would be California, I guess. So that's number 13, 14, I don't remember.
I think it was 13.
13.
Once you cross over into California, be prepared for the prices to go up, but man, the food here is great.
We're at one of my favorite places in Tahoe. I got the chicken pot pie. Pop's got the shepherd's pie.
One of my faves.
We crushed through this food and then we went on to the dessert course that they're really known for here.
This is what you get here though, the bread pudding. Haven't had it in a long time, but I love it, so I'm excited. Hopefully it's good. fantastic meal, and as much as I want to go to bed right now, I don't get to Tahoe as much as I want, so I'm going to take Pops to one of my favorite spots for sunset.
This is a good 30 minutes off the Lincoln Highway, but if you've never been to Tahoe, then I highly recommend you make the drive over to Emerald Bay. Start by going to Inspiration Point, which gives you a view from the south of Emerald Bay and lets you see Finette Island with the tea house on the top. Then drive another 5 minutes down the road and find a pull-off on the side to go to the Emerald Bay Vista Point.
This is absolutely gorgeous. I would love to see the sun shining on it too, reflecting off it, but this is absolutely beautiful. Oh my gosh.
You can walk along the pathway here and then head down to Lower Eagle Falls, which is a waterfall that falls down into Emerald Bay. This is a popular viewpoint for photos since you're at the top of the waterfall looking down, and it's also popular for sunset because it gives you some great views of a waterfall and of Emerald Bay out in the distance.
I mean, it's pretty hard to beat, right?
I've been here many times, but I never get tired of seeing the view. So I just found a rock to sit on and I soaked in the last bit of color from the sunset.
I don't know where Pops ran off to, but he was taking his own pictures and all excited. Thank you so much for letting me share this special place with you. Hopefully you enjoyed it as much as I did. And we're back to finish the Lincoln Highway tomorrow or the next day. Unfortunately, we're leaving Tahoe today to drive to Oakland, but we're stopping at one of my favorite places for breakfast first.
Freebird is a place that Amy and I have been coming to in Tahoe for about a decade.
They're famous for their chai here, and I highly recommend you get a dirty chai, which has 2 shots of espresso in it. Got my acai bowl to start the day.
Pops on with the bagel and cream cheese.
Great spot if you like an acai bowl and chai, but now we are heading south, or west. West, I think.
Leaving South Lake Tahoe, you'll head up into the mountains and you'll get some amazing views out over the water and out towards the craggy cliffs in front of you. The original drive didn't go the same way over Echo Summit, but we just followed Highway 50 around. This is another more remote section of the drive without a lot of things to stop at, but beautiful views the entire time. Be sure to look out for Horsetail Falls when you go around one of the bends. As you pass through the town of Strawberry, be sure to look out for the Strawberry Lodge, which dates back to the 1800s, but it has burned down 3 times and been rebuilt since then. This section of the drive feels like you're going through the forest with small mountain towns, little waterfalls, and lots of trees. Eventually though, you'll make your way into Placerville, another historic town in California.
After the 1848 gold discovery, this town was called Old Dry Diggins because you had to dig up the dry gold and mix it with water. And then that started to bring bad guys into the area. And in 1849, someone was convicted and hanged, and they were like, hey, let's call this place Hangtown. And so for a while it was called Hangtown, but if you think about it, that's not the greatest name for a city. So it wasn't actually until 1854 that they switched the name to Placerville, which it is today. The original Hangtown name was not fruit hanging from a tree. Okay, let's try to kind of clean up the past.
We're changing it and making it more modern. Hangtown. Hanging fruit. This is a fun little downtown with lots of history and fun shops that you can explore. I've been here a lot of times over the years and I always love coming back.
There's also the Carey House Hotel in the town, which dates back to the 1850s. You can still stay here if you like, but definitely go inside and see the amazing stained glass that they have in the lobby. From here, we headed out of the mountains and on towards Folsom.
So we found this donut shop called BJ Cinnamon in Folsom that was rated the best donut shop in America in 2017. We figured you'd be really bummed at us if we didn't stop by and try it.
All right, the most popular thing here is the cinnamon roll, and then they said this is one of the most popular donuts, which is a raspberry twist.
Feels right. Yeah, very good. It's a good twist. The cake of the donut is really good.
Like, it's not the best donut shop in America, but man, that raspberry twist was an incredible donut. It's definitely a way above average mom and pop shop donut. Check it out. About 5 minutes from the donut shop, we made it to a historic bridge, which I've actually photographed before, not even knowing it was part of the Lincoln Highway. So we're gonna go see it. Here's the 2 bridges, obviously a car bridge, and then this one was a railroad bridge, but it's a pedestrian bridge now.
The now pedestrian bridge was created in 1893.
It's amazing that they saved this old bridge and made it a pedestrian bridge instead of getting rid of it. And then look at these views. of the bridge that you use to cross the Lincoln Highway now.
I get giddy about donuts and I get giddy about bridges, so these last 2 stops were a highlight for me for sure. But from here, we're following the Lincoln Highway through Folsom and into Sacramento. Outside of historic downtown Folsom, it's pretty hard to find Lincoln Highway signs along this drive in California anymore.
Our next stop is the California capital here in Sacramento. The 2 routes that split around Reno converge again in Sacramento. So that's why we're here.
You can normally get a great view of the Tower Bridge from here as well, but there's a lot of construction happening at the moment.
The California State Capitol building is an amazing building to explore, and it was built between 1860 and 1874.
Whatever you do, make sure you see the rotunda here. It's pretty incredible. And this is how the office would have looked like in 1906, which was even before the Lincoln Highway. It's so awesome to see all of these portraits painted, and then you come to this one and you're like, what?
That is fabulous.
It's great. There he is, the Governor. Now we're saying goodbye to Sacramento and we're heading south before heading west again.
Of course, if you want more stops in Sacramento, I have a video on that I'll link to in the description.
We've made it to the city park in Galt for a memorial on Lincoln Highway. It's supposed to be right there.
This is a cool old memorial to the Lincoln Highway. They have the colors. They actually use a piece of the original highway here. This is a cool little thing in a small town. I mean, I love it.
The sign says there's a piece of history below dated 1924, and that's this right here, an original part of the road.
So once again, I mean, we're here in 24, so you're actually looking at a piece of the road that's 100 years old. That's pretty awesome.
It may seem like we're too excited about this monument, but honestly, there's just not much left about the Lincoln Highway in California.
We're now in Lodi, which is the birthplace of a really fun fast food chain you might know, A&W Root Beer. And here is the official site that Roy Allen served his first frosty mug of creamy root beer. It's right here on the ground next to the Lodi Arch. Of course, it's more fun to have a root beer than it is just to look at the sign, so we're gonna go to A&W Root Beer in Lodi now.
Don't forget to stop and see the Lodi Arch, which is 40 feet high and was built in 1907.
Pops, can I interest you in a frosty mug of root beer?
Only if it's at the first A&W restaurant.
Why, no problem. It's right here.
Technically, this isn't the original location, which doesn't exist anymore, but this one has the small museum and it feels like the original.
100 years, 1919 and 2019, so 105 years now. This is a legit Lincoln Highway stop right here.
This is a cool spot with lots of memorabilia, but I'm not sure how many fans there are of A&W, as everybody always looks at me funny when I'm taking pictures of the cases.
Look at that, frosty mugs.
Wow. You know what they say, A&W Root Beer's got that frosty mug taste.
Cheers.
I gotta say, A&W Root Beer never disappoints.
Yeah.
It's always excellent.
You're in.
I'm in.
Cheers to all of you as well for watching this video. That is good root beer. Look at that.
Freezes against a cup.
I even got some coming off of mine. Heck yes. The speed with which Pops destroyed that root beer, I think that might be his favorite stop on the Lincoln Highway.
It's a good one.
Alright, we got a few more things to do.
Heading on, we drove through Stockton to see Hotel Stockton, which opened in 1910, and then we continued on to see the Mossdale Railroad Bridge.
This area is called the Mossdale Crossing, and this is critical as this was where the final link of the Transcontinental Railroad was put together. The first train to cross that link went across on September 8, 1869. And if you think about that time period, the only way to get from east to west was by train. So the Lincoln Highway totally opened it up so people could move from east to west without being stuck on trains.
Right after you cross over the bridge, there's a small Lincoln Highway sign, one of the first that we saw in California, and then we just headed onto the interstate as we drove towards Livermore.
In the city of Livermore, they're actually redoing this Lincoln Highway garage, and it is a museum as well. But true to the other things on the Lincoln Highway, it's only open 4 hours a week, Sunday from like 10 to 2, I believe.
This is called a Duarte Garage and it was built in 1915. I would have loved to see the inside of it, so let us know how it is in the comments if you go.
From here, we're heading to Oakland to do a few more stops before we end the day.
In Oakland, we checked into our hotel, which was right along the water, and then we went to meet up with one of my friends who lives in the city.
You can see San Francisco off in the distance. The end of our Lincoln Highway trip looms tomorrow. We have made it to the tourist area of Oakland, Jack London Square. We're gonna get some dinner and explore a little bit.
Jack London Square is a fun meeting place in Oakland with lots of restaurants along the water and a lot of history related to Jack London. Here you can see his Gold Rush era cabin that was built south of Dawson City in the heart of the Klondike prior to the Gold Rush of 1898. The story goes that in 1965 the cabin was dismantled and 2 replicas were constructed from the original logs. One in Dawson City and the other here in Oakland. For dinner we headed to Farmhouse Kitchen Thai cuisine, which my friend recommended and which had amazing food. Also, my dad got an eggplant tofu dish here, and I'm sure you would not believe that if I hadn't taken photos of it.
Place is a little pricey, but incredibly good Thai food. And now we're gonna head over and check out this old bar.
This is probably one of my favorite bars in California, and it's been here since 1884. It's a tiny spot, but there's so much history here, including a young Jack London who used to come in here and listen to the stories, which supposedly encouraged some of his stories that he wrote later in life. It's one of those places that has that old school cool that you wouldn't expect to find anymore, and it's awesome that they have outdoor seating here now as well, since the bar is so small.
That's it for today. Tomorrow we are finishing the Lincoln Highway. Here we are starting our last day on the Lincoln Highway, heading into San Francisco.
While we could have easily finished the previous day, we didn't want to rush it and we wanted to make sure that we had the time we needed at the end of the Lincoln Highway. So we stayed in Oakland, crossed the Bay Bridge, and made our way into San Francisco. One note that if you're driving in San Francisco, it can be very difficult to park, especially at places like the Ferry Building.
This is the Ferry Building, so before the Lincoln took the Bay Bridge, it actually had to come across on a boat, and you arrived here.
The Ferry Building was open in 1898 and it's been many things over the years, but now it's a trendy food hall with all sorts of different restaurants and things that you can purchase at the shops. My 2 favorite spots there are Blue Bottle Coffee and Hog Island Oyster Company, and do note that my dad's not in these videos because he just pulled over on the side of the road since parking is so difficult here.
Pops, do you think that 100 years ago when people were driving the Lincoln Highway, they thought there'd be self-driving cars when they arrived?
I don't believe so. I think they were still looking at horses.
I don't think we're in Nebraska anymore.
Wait a second, this is not the right way to go. What street is this on?
While it has nothing to do with Lincoln Highway, we decided we needed to drive down Lombard Street before we continued on.
This might be a seedling mile in San Francisco. It's brick, like the other ones we've saw.
It's a fun and historic street, and can you imagine what it would be like to live there with all of the people taking pictures all the time?
This would be a view of the Golden Gate Bridge, but it is too foggy today. I guess you can make out the bottom of the Golden Gate Bridge. That's about it, though.
Okay, this is the Palace of Fine Arts, which was built for the 1915 Panama Pacific International Exposition, and it was built in order to house artwork for the exposition. And the Lincoln Highway would go right by here, and as you recall, it started in 1913, so it would have been here a few years before this exposition. So people may have used it to come to this, actually.
The Palace of Fine Arts is an immaculate spot to visit in San Francisco, and it's one of my favorite architectural spots in all of California. I highly recommend you take 30 minutes and walk around to see it from all of the different views, including across from the water and under the dome itself.
Now we have one more stop left on our Lincoln Highway road trip.
As we make the final drive and you see these beautiful views of the Golden Gate Bridge, note that fog is a way of life in San Francisco, and there's even an Instagram account dedicated to the fog.
There it is, Pops, the end of our road trip up that hill.
It's been amazing, but it's a very bittersweet ending to see the end of this road trip.
Here we go. The route officially ends in San Francisco's Lincoln Park, which was dedicated to the president in 1909. You can find the official endpoint in front of the Legion of Honor out by the bus stop.
And there it is, the end of the Lincoln Highway. Western terminus of the Lincoln Highway. And here is the route we took all the way across, and then at this split right here, we took the southern part of the split, and we made it to San Francisco. I mean, the route kind of ends how it's been the whole time, with a small memorial dedicated to an almost forgotten highway.
When I think back on this journey, it was a lot different than I anticipated. It didn't have the flash of Route 66, and you had to really look to find the hidden gems. But the way it allowed us to experience America and to see these small towns as we traveled across it is something that I will never forget.
And just like that, another road trip is done. The Lincoln Highway. How many miles was it, Pops?
3,389, and finally figured out it's 13 states.
13 states. New York to San Francisco.
We did it.
And unfortunately, this video is done. So you can check out some of Pop's history videos and things he created in the description. We'll see you on the next one.
Thanks so much for going on this route with us.
If you're interested, the Legion of Honor is also a great art museum right next to the end of Lincoln Highway. Thanks so much for going on these adventures with us. It means so much to Pops and I, and it's the reason why we continue doing these things. Be sure to leave a like and comment if you made it all the way to the end, and thank you so much for watching with us. Alright, we'll see you on the next one.